quick little proviso that while we are cheerfully calling all vegans, the opinions and beliefs expressed by them do not always reflect our own.
So often vegan voices are discouraged, mocked, and even silenced, but they come through loud, clear, and eloquently in the book we'll be discussing today, which just so happens to be titled Vegan Voices. The editor of this comprehensive compilation is a professor at the University of Richmond, a doctor of musical arts, an author, sought-after speaker, critically acclaimed pianist and harpsichordist, featured in a book on the rise of veganism, and appears as herself in the powerful film Eating Our Way to Extinction, narrated by Kate Winslet. And one of the inspiring changemakers contributing to a chapter in the book is a longtime animal rights activist and the president of Fishfeel, a first-of-its-kind organization devoted to promoting the recognition of marine animals as sentient beings deserving of our respect and compassion. She has been on the show before, but she's just so dang awesome, we had to sit down with her again. Please welcome Dr. Joanne Kong and Mary Finelli to Calling All Vegans. Yay! Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks for taking the time today to speak with us. It's really appreciated.
So, Joanne, school's out for Christmas. So that must be a great feeling. Now, you are a professional classical pianist and harpsichordist, and you play a wide range of genres. But do you have a guilty pleasure when it comes to music that might surprise people to learn about? Like, I mean, do you like to go to punk shows?
No, I'm a purely classical artist. I mean, I have played some new age music, but I was trained from a very young age. So my favorite composer was Johann Sebastian Bach.
Very nice. Who's
And
that?
what's interesting about my music is that it actually has, over the past couple years, kind of merged with my vegan advocacy activities. So I include music and the arts, poetry, different ways of getting the message across through different sensory pathways. And I think each of us have our own unique gifts and ways that we can bring our vegan voices across. And that's really clear in the book. Every person has their own unique path and ways, such as Mary, to really send this important message out to the world.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, there are countless ways we can stand up for animals. And I mean, each can be its own unique form of activism.
So I know this is like asking a mother who's their favorite child, but if you had to choose one instrument, do you prefer the piano or the harpsichord?
Well, my answer to that is always the one that I happen to be playing at the moment.
Fair enough, yeah. Fair enough.
Right.
Now, your TEDx talk, The Power of Plant-Based Eating, from 2016 has been very well received, let's say. When I looked a few days ago, it was at 952,988 views. And then I went back just a few minutes later because I wanted to make sure I'd written down the right number. It was up to 953,010. So either you're reaching an incredible number of people interested in exploring a plant-based diet, or you've got yourself a stalker. So, now, are you surprised at its popularity, and has veganism finally hit the mainstream?
Yeah, well, veganism is definitely going mainstream, and I was surprised at how quickly the talk got circulated around the globe. And a lot of people, I'm at the point where I don't want to read all the comments because there's always a lot of negative messaging out there, and I think that can be a distraction from what you're trying to do. But if you remember in the talk, towards the end, there's a place where I talk about a young pig, and you know how they're kept in confinement. And I correlate that pig to humans, and the pig is essentially saying, I have feelings just like you. I love to play. I cry. I take care of my babies. And kind of the strategy behind that was simply for people to put themselves in the place of the animals. And I found that that was a very effective way to reach people because it wasn't me up there on the TEDx stage telling people what they should do and that they should go plant-based. It was simply a way to get them to think about something that maybe they've never thought about our kindred animals.
Most haven't. Mary, marine animals, especially fish, are in the unenviable position of being exploited and abused more than any other class of animals, yet they enjoy the least protection and concern for their well-being. And that's even from our own animal protection community. They're seen basically as foods, pawns in the dark hobby aquarium trade. They're victims of the multi-billion-dollar fish oil industry. And recreational fishing treats their torture as sport and even romanticizes it, and they suffer horribly. Why are people so easily able to omit fish from their circle of compassion?
Well, I think it's largely social conditioning. We're taught that, we're shown that, made to believe that fishing is a wholesome, peaceful pastime, something you do to go out and relax. They're actually having like veterans who are, people who are recovering from post-traumatic stress syndrome, go out and go fishing. I mean, it's just so absurd to think that you can, heal yourself by harming someone else, Yeah, and I mean, you hear so often people say they're vegetarian, but they eat fish as if fish aren't even animals. And oftentimes people will give up so-called red meat and they'll end up eating more birds and fishes, which is actually doing even more harm because you're harming even more animals. So it's really social conditioning. Society looks at fish as if they don't count. They're not included in so many animal protection laws. They're given away as trinkets at fairs and carnivals. It's just really, you really have to think to get beyond that social conditioning and realize, which shouldn't be that hard to realize, that fish are of course animals. They're sentient beings. There's plenty of scientific evidence showing that they can feel fear and pain and pleasure and a whole spectrum of feelings. So there's really, it's just well, also industry, bombarding us with these messages that fish is something healthy to eat and selling them is for mere pennies. You can get fish in pet stores for pennies. So it's just, they're just considered disposable, really.
And I suppose the fact that they don't share space with us, that they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, and that they're a little bit different looking than any other creature on our, well, I shouldn't say creature maybe, but any other being on land,
Right.
Yeah, that's very true too. They live in a different element. It is harder for us to relate to them. They're not mammals like us, but they're still animals. They still share so many of our same characteristics that, if you just watch a fish for a while, it should be apparent to you that they breathe, they move around, they're inquisitive, they're sensitive, they're in all important ways. They're just like us, really.
Absolutely.
That's right.
So, Mary, the documentary Seaspiracy recently became available worldwide on Netflix. Did you find that Fish Feel got any upsurge in interest? Like, were you getting more people seeking you out after that happened?
I don't know if that was the case necessarily, but I was delighted by how popular it was. I mean, it's an excellent documentary, and so much of the criticism, of course, there was a lot of criticism by industry, of course, and you're just going to get that with any kind of social issue. But so much of the criticism was either wrong or irrelevant, really. But it's an excellent documentary. It was wildly popular on Netflix, one of the most popular offerings when it initially came out. In many different countries, and it really has sparked interest in fish and other aquatic issues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, in order to help stand up for aquatic animals, on your website you've got a lot of resources, as well as food alternatives, recipes and such, so that you can still enjoy some of those flavors without having to use animals for it. Do you have any particular favorite on your website there?
I'm sorry, any particular one?
Do you have anything in particular that you would consider your favorite bit on your website there?
Well,
Like Gardein fish or something like that.
yes, actually, one of my favorite pages on the website is called Your Page, and people who have come to realize that fish are sentient and deserve our respect and compassion explain how they came to that realization. And a lot of them are people who used to fish, and they had some kind of epiphany to realize that, these are also sentient beings just like us, and we shouldn't be harming them for fun or unnecessarily.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about vegan voices. The book's publisher, Lantern Books, focuses on books on veganism, social justice, and spirituality. So that's amazing to be picked up by them, Joanne. What was the inspiration behind the book, and how would you describe it?
Well, actually, it was an interesting way that the idea came to me. I simply happened to wake up one morning and the words vegan voices popped into my head, and I saw the words and I just realized that it was almost like some kind of a sign, or it's like my subconscious was kind of saying, hey, this would be a really great way in one place to have all these unique perspectives. And people love to read stories, right? We want to kind of see what the experiences are, the personal challenges, how people, develop not only in terms of their diet, but just living a more compassionate lifestyle, how it changed them. So in the summer of 2020, I reached out to lots of people, lots of activists and advocates, ones that I knew or knew of, and kind of came up with 50 writers. So
No biggie. No
And
biggie.
how did you go about kind of deciding which contributors you were reaching out to, and what were the criterias that were going to make it into the book?
Right. There weren't any particular criteria because as I went through the process, I contacted about 85 to 90 people, and the people that did express interest came out to be about 50. And then I set a deadline for receiving the essays, and then I worked with each writer to kind of fine tune, do any editing, that editorial process. Of course, Lantern then, on top of that, they had their own editors to even a higher level. So, and all of the essays were read by the Lantern staff who approved the essays. And then it was on to production. And one of the writers, Rebecca Moore, who is the founder of the Institute for Animal Happiness in Woodstock, New York, she designed the beautiful cover of the book. And for those of you that haven't seen it, and it's like these are sound waves, and the animals she envisioned like they're on a shore. And it was just such an imaginative and evocative visual that she came up with. So it was really special that her artistry became part of the book. So I hope that when people read the book, they're just going to be inspired to realize that being plant-based, it's not just about physical health and diet. It's something that impacts you at a very deep level in terms of how we relate to other living beings. What are the choices we want to make for our children and our families? How do our food systems impact the planet? In this time of climate change and all of the environmental damage we're seeing, this has come to a point where we have to really make a big transformational power shift in the ways that we eat food. I mean, it's challenging. I think it's part of human nature, isn't it, to want to keep doing things the way we've always done them. We can become kind of complacent and feel distant from these so-called crises, but they're becoming more and more obvious. Look at what happened in Kentucky just last week. These disasters are tied really, really strongly to the exploitation and use of animals as a food source. So I hope this book will wake up some people and get them starting to think about their lifestyle.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, like human nature. I mean, who hasn't waited until the night before to cram for an exam or something, right?
exactly.
You wait until like it's completely urgent, and then you act. Unfortunately.
Right. So on that topic, who is Vegan Voices speaking to? Like, who is the target audience that you envision to be reading this book?
Yeah, the target audience is, first of all, people that wonder what veganism is all about, people who wonder why do people go vegan? They wonder, is it difficult? Is it just kind of an overnight thing, or does it happen gradually? Of course, you see in the book that everybody's story is so individual. They'll also see that different things inspired them to go vegan. Curtis Volmar, an activist who's in the book, watching Gary Yourofsky's speech inspired him. Overnight, he threw away all the animal products in his kitchen. Derek Treesize, who's a bodybuilder, he's fantastic. His then to be wife, or soon to be wife, inspired him. Prior to that, he described himself as the last guy you'd expect to go. He talks about downing a gallon of ice cream and 2 steaks and all this kind of thing. And then he met Marcella, who said, hey, you need to read the science. And he became educated. You have folks in the book who were inspired through a companion animal. Just different ways. And I think people will respond to these individual stories and see that going vegan is something that they can consider. And then, of course, anyone who is already a vegan, a longtime vegan or a longtime advocate or activist, will simply be inspired. For me, as I read all these stories and I got to know the essays at a very detailed level, I was just constantly inspired to do more. And it also helped me to overcome some of the periodic times of despair, where I feel like I'm in this alone or I'm not doing enough, feeling more and more as part of this beautiful community, almost like a community of light workers, right? Folks who are here at this time, like all of us, to make this positive change in the world. So the book is really for anyone and everyone.
Well, and to be honest, I was just nosy. I just liked reading about, it was fun reading the stories of people I knew and just to know what resonated with them to make the changes in their life. There were so many heavy hitters in the vegan movement in this book, like whether they wrote an essay or provided a testimonial, and even our own Anita Crimes here in Toronto,
nice
she provided one.
Yeah.
Besides Mary's story, obviously, was there a particularly moving story that someone shared?
Yeah, there's one that I'd like to just read a short excerpt of. Gwenna Hunter, who is an amazing activist in Los Angeles, and her inspiration and connection to animals is a very spiritual one. And she talks about dreams and kind of visionary experiences she has. And this is one of them. And I'll go ahead and read part of it. She says, I found myself in a different space and time as I was standing outside of a slaughterhouse where there were cows and pigs standing in line, waiting their turn to be slaughtered. I instantly had a telepathic connection with them, and I knew that they had full awareness of what was going to happen. I began crying and yelling at them, telling them not to reincarnate back onto this planet and not to come back to Earth because we keep killing and hurting their kind. All of a sudden, one of the pigs turned to me and spoke to me in the most powerful male voice, saying, we will keep coming back again and again until you all get it right. We love you all that much. Our suffering gives some of your lives purpose. He then sent an impulse of his love to my heart, and it was so incredibly pure and beautiful. this impulse let me know that it's not just that we're trying to save them, they are also saving us. So when I read her essay, I mean, I just started crying. I mean, it's just so at such a deep level, this sense of connection and opening up emotionally to this empathy for another being, really powerful.
Definitely.
That is a very, yes, these personal writings by such compassionate people. Most of us are born with a vegan heart, but the real world robs so many of that, leaving them indoctrinated and apathetic about animal exploitation and even active participants in it. Why is standing up for animals reawakened in some, but not others? And why do you feel that more artists aren't vegan, given their creative juice and sensitivity and how they don't walk in lockstep with the rest of society for the most part?
That's such an excellent question, and I wish I had a really, really good answer.
All right, interview's over.
I think that people, everybody is so individual. It's not only a fact of how forceful the cultural conditioning is in terms of how each of us grow up. I think that each of us are born with our own unique kind of emotional slash spiritual profile. And I think some people have a certain kind of sensitivity, not to say that we're superior to others who are still pre-vegan, but I think some of us have that in us, and it's a matter of the strength of that empathy, and also having the right conditions that surround our change. For instance, I'll look at my own development. I grew up in a family of really excellent cooks. I consumed animal products way up until I was in my 20s, and I just never thought about it. I was like the perfect example of the culturally conditioned person who consumes animals. But the thing that changed it for me was when one day my husband brought home a book, which you probably know, it's called Animal Factories by Jim Mason and Peter Singer. And this was really a groundbreaking book. It was published in 1980, a thin book with black and white pictures. We read the book. It talked about what happens to these animals. And right away, it was like the light bulb went off. It's like, how could we be doing this? This is so cruel. And the next day, from then on, we left animals off of our plate. So that was like a catalyst, kind of a trigger for us to really connect with who we really are. And different people will have different points of influence. So I think it's a matter of your natural sensitivity and empathy, and also coming into that specific moment or association with someone that kind of serves as a trigger. Yeah, so that maybe that partly answers the question.
And what made you ask Mary to be a contributor? Anything in particular?
Oh, well, Mary and I, we're always running into each other at Veg Fest, right?
Oh yeah.
Because Mary, you live in Baltimore, isn't that right? Or Silver Spring. Right, you live in Maryland. So we oftentimes run into each other at various Veg Fests up and down the East Coast. And of course, I do her fantastic, amazing work. So throughout the process, she was a natural choice. And I think at one point, because for some reason our messages were getting into each other's spam folders or something. Talk about technology, right? I think I overlooked a response from you or so. I can't remember what it was, but ultimately we got you into the book.
You were great, Joanne. You were really wonderful to work with.
Oh, thanks. It was really, really.
Ooh, little mutual admiration club going on here, huh?
So, what do you hope people will take away from the book?
Gosh, I hope that people will simply take away the message that each of us have tremendous personal power to shape our lives. One of the essays towards the end of the book is by Lynn Sylvan, and she's one of the amazing grassroots organizers who she runs an educational group called Eugene Veg Education Network in Eugene, Oregon. And she talks about the need, and I think this resonates across the board, to do things that you care about and to do it with positive energy and above all, do it with joy. And that I think, really resonated with me so much to keep a very positive outlook on everything. And she said that, I think it's one passage from the book where she says, you derive great joy not only from doing things right, but from doing the right things. So I think that this book will send that message to any reader that they can make the choice right now to do whatever they can to create a more compassionate and peaceful world.
Absolutely.
Mary, your essay covers, maybe not surprisingly, our underwater friends, and it's titled Swimming Against Ignorance and Cruelty. Fighting for animals is always a tough uphill battle, but when it comes to fish, one really is swimming against the tide, since they're often just seen as floating vegetables. Your story really resonated with me because I was a compassionate kid who stood up for everyone, including insects, but I did fish a few times as a child, and I even felt bad for the worms on the hooks, but so couldn't even use worms, had to use lures. I now have a great soft spot for our aquatic friends, but when and why did you make the strong connection to fishes, so much so that you started Fish Feel?
Yes. Well, actually, Sue, we'd love to have your story on your page. Do you want to explain how you came to, realize that we should? Well, it was, I've been working in animal advocacy for quite a while and really focusing on farmed animals because I wanted to do the most I could for the most animals. And as Henry Spirit pointed out back in the 80s, all the other issues were kind of a drop in the bucket compared to all the animals who were being eaten. And there was so little attention to farmed animals, which really, picked up. And then the focus really was on farmed animals. So I was working that for quite a few years. And then, I was just as oblivious as everyone else. I don't know why it didn't really dawn on me about fishes. And what really got me annoyed was people kept saying the number of animals who were killed for food and leaving out the number of aquatic animals, which are by far the greatest number. So, so I thought, thought something should be done. Nothing was happening really to speak of for them, very little. So I thought about it for a couple of years and decided to start Fish Feel.
That's so good. Yeah, I totally related to your love of tuna as a child. My sister and I, on our birthdays, right, we would always pick fish and chips for our birthday supper. We used to get so mad at my younger sister because she'd always choose pork chops and sauerkraut, and we're like, no.
The great news now is whatever you have a hankering for, there is a vegan version.
Exactly. Then it just continues to expand, and they keep on, they expand it and make it more and more accessible. And really, you don't have to give up anything aside from taking an animal's life. I mean,
yeah, that's right.
It really opens up a whole world of food, that a lot of people just don't realize it's out there. And really now there really truly is a vegan version of virtually anything you can imagine. And on our website, we have hundreds of recipes for, they have vegan squid, vegan sea slug, anything you can imagine, there's a vegan version.
Yeah. None of those things I would have eaten, even the non-vegan version.
No. But even these delicacies, we have so many recipes for vegan tuna. It's so easy to make. And if you really like that ocean flavor, just use seaweed. That's what really gives it that ocean flavor.
I remember my sister and I being at the Toronto Veg Fest several years ago, and Gardine was there with this fishless fillet. And it was like, oh, the only thing I've been missing.
And now, you can get them in your regular supermarkets, and Good Catch is another one. They're being sold pretty much wherever you would buy fish. So and a lot of this you can also make at home by yourself, if you're so inclined. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. So Joanne, do you have a favorite quote from the book? And Mary, do you have just a favorite quote in general? One of mine is, "Apathy is the glove into which evil slips its hand," and it's attributed to Bodhi Taney, which I think, because on the internet they've got that meme going around with Abraham Lincoln saying, "Don't believe everything you read on the internet."
Yeah, well, I have a couple quotes I'd like to share. The first one is by Shankar Narayan, who first went vegan like 20, 30 years ago when in India, no one knew what vegan even meant. And he has been one of the pioneers of veganism in India. But his saying, and he quotes it in the book, is veganism is a journey, not a destination. So it really opens up the possibilities for seeing what you can do with your life. And then Sandra Isabel Kyle from New Zealand, every week she goes to slaughterhouses and bears witness. And I think this is a wonderful quote to share, given especially where you are in Toronto with Anita being there, the Save movement. She's founder of the Save movement. So I thought it would be appropriate to share Sandra Kyle's quote that says, "Along with thousands of others in the Save movement who bear witness to and document these animals' lives, I want the world to see what I see. When I look at a calf, a cow, a sheep, a pig at the slaughterhouse, I don't just see a body. I feel a being. I see a soul." Beautiful, beautiful quote.
It really is.
And Mary, do you have a particular favorite?
One I really like is, I'll paraphrase it, but it goes to, in effect, if you want to know where you would stand on slavery before the Civil War, don't look at how you stand on human slavery now, but look at where you stand on animal rights. And that's by Captain Paul Watson, the founder of Sea Shepherd. It's so true. It is so irksome how there's so many people demanding rights for humans, and yet they're so exploitative and so cruel and so oblivious to what's happening to non-human animals, and um I just think that if it's no better, being speciesist, discriminating against someone based on their species is really no better than being racist or sexist. It's no more rational.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's
Absolutely.
the truth.
True. Dr. Kong, you appeared in Eating Our Way to Extinction. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What's the overall message and what did you contribute in the film?
Right. So the film was, I think, 4 years in the making. And when the pandemic hit, they delayed releasing it. And one thing I point out to people, of course, Dr. Michael Greger, who we all know, appears in just about every documentary there to veganism, but they actually included some footage of him in 2018. That was the same year too that I was interviewed. And he says he gives a warning about factory farming causing pandemics. And in the documentary, they put the year 2018 up there, and there's Dr. Greger warning that this could happen, and indeed it did. So what the film does so beautifully is simply point out that we are at a critical point. We're running out of time. Our global food systems, heavily reliant on exploiting animals, is eating up the resources, destroying the gifts that the earth is giving us. I mean, people talk about we need to save the planet. Well, the planet will keep on going. It's like, will we be able to continue to exist? So it does a beautiful job of pointing that out. And I especially liked the footage of indigenous peoples living in various forests around the world who keep making the point that this is not our forest. We're just part of this whole ecosystem, and pointing out how these people still have this direct connection to nature, but modern urbanized man, we have lost that connection, and we're out of balance and we need to take action and do something now. That's the primary message of the film. And I'm only in it for like a total of, I think, a minute and a half. And that's the message I concentrate on, that the food choices we make are critical and we have to take action as soon as we can.
Very important message, obviously.
Yeah. Well, it's a very One Health approach. I mean, if we're going to be healthy, if the planet's healthy and the animals are healthy, it all hinges on one another. So this is for both of you or one of you, whichever, but as tragic as it's been, is there a silver lining to the pandemic where it might serve as an opportunity for people to wake up from their trance regarding their food choices, to recognize again this kind of connection between planet, animal, and human, and be proactive to avoid this happening again? Or are they just going to continue with their willful ignorance and their reluctance to act and their solution aversion and just focus on wearing masks and hand sanitizer and getting vaccinated?
That's a wonderful question, and I wish I had a more positive answer, but I think
2 strikes now, Joanne. 2 strikes.
like the first thing you would see in the news is, oh, the supply chain, the food chain has been broken, because with the pandemic, of course, raging through the meat packing facilities and slaughterhouses and everything, workers weren't going into work and there were meat shortages. And what you saw on the news, what I saw a lot of, even online news, talking about the millions and millions of livestock that were gassed or suffocated. They had to, there were no ways to process these animals, so they just killed them without a thought.
Oh, those ventilation shutdowns, that was just horrific.
No. And so, I mean, that to me was incredibly distressing, because it was just indicative of just how numbed most of society is to what's happening. And they use these terms like, we're going to depopulate them, we're going to cull them, they don't admit what's happening, that millions and millions of our kindred animals are being killed. So I do wish that more people will take the pandemic as the warning shot that we must see it as. Currently, there's like 8 to 10 different strains of avian flu that are spreading around the globe, and any one of these could be a pandemic, a pathogen that's way more deadly than COVID-19.
Oh yeah, like H5N1 is something like a 60% mortality rate, or that's what they predict.
Right. So I hope that more and more people will say, hey, we should do something about this. So.
Okay, Mary.
More hopeful outlook on it.
Okay, Mary. Hopefully, fingers crossed here. You've got a more optimistic outlook. What's your take on it?
I have to agree with Joanne. Unfortunately, just a good example of that was when it started, and people were spreading through all these places, especially meatpacking plants, and yet they considered them essential workers, as if we couldn't survive without eating meat. That was really depressing. It really shows that people were willing to let these people die just so they could get meat. So yes, that was really depressing. But I think with all of these instances, like BSE, mad cow disease over in the UK, really helped perk up interest in vegetarianism and ultimately veganism. So each of these things, is just another clue to the public that what we're doing is really, really wrong, really problematic. And Sue actually sent me a face mask that said eating animals causes pandemics, and I have gotten so much use out of that, and it's a conversation starter. So this is a great example for us, opportunity for us to try to get this message across.
Definitely. So this will go to both of you. We'll start with Mary. Can you provide us any contact information that you want to share with our viewers, how to reach out to your group, etc.?
We'll actually put it down in a little.
Yeah, it's going to appear right here.
Yeah.
Well, you can easily reach us at info@fishfeel.org, and our website is fishfeel.org, and we're very active on Facebook. But I would like to also put in a plug for Vegan Voices, because I have read the book, and it really is. It's people who are thinking outside the crowd, people who have gotten away from this mentality of consuming animals and exploiting animals without compunction, and it's so interesting to see the ways that they came into doing that, and what motivated them and what influenced them. And oftentimes when I get together with vegans, I'll ask them, how did you get into this? And here's a whole book of some of the most interesting people explaining how they did that. So it's a really interesting book, and it is very inspiring, because it's true. Sometimes you think, does anybody else get it? But you read this and you see how these people not only got it, but became so engaged with it, and are reaching out and bringing others, helping others get it. So it's a very uplifting book. It is. Now, I'm so honored to be included in it.
It's heartening to see all the different ways from which people came to it, like all the different types of people and whatever.
Definitely.
So,
And Dr. Kong, are there any contact information that you'd like to make sure people have in order to get a copy of Vegan Voices, and to reach out to you if there's any other points of?
Yes, my website is Vegans Make a Difference. So it's vegansmakeadifference.com. And if people go to the Lantern Publishing website, which is lanternpm.org, there's a book, a page for each book that they publish, and the ordering information is there. They can also go directly to Amazon if they use Amazon to order the book. And if they do order on Amazon, I encourage them, after they've read a book, to hopefully be inspired to leave a 5-star review, so that
Definitely.
feedback is possible.
I did vote for you on that thing that you sent me.
Yeah, our book is a finalist in the Veg Fest UK Favorite Vegan Book of the Year, so it's nice to have that recognition.
Yeah, you were amongst like some pretty amazing people, but that's an amazing book. So
It makes a great gift too.
exactly.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Absolutely.
Mary, I just need to ask you, is your fish's feel equals not a meal? Is that t-shirt for sale anywhere?
That's actually by another group out of New York called ROAR, Reaching Out for Animal Rights. That's their shirt. We actually just got a t-shirt. I don't know if you can see it. I'm wearing it now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Ooh.
An artist from the UK, Philip McCullough Downs, who's he's just fantastic animal rights artist and activist. And I've been so just amazed with his art for all these years. And I asked him if he would consider doing it for us, and he said yes. And he'd never even drawn fish much before, but he just did this fantastic t-shirt. So we're just getting them made now.
Awesome.
Not bad for a newbie.
For fish, yeah.
No, I've heard of him.
Speaking of t-shirts, I also have t-shirts that say I am a vegan voice. So I have those for sale. So if people, I don't have one with me right here, if people are interested in getting a t-shirt, they should contact me.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely.
Well, it magically, just behind your shoulder there, a copy of your t-shirt popped up, because I'm pretty sure I can find a picture somewhere.
He'll edit it in. So just to wrap up, vegans often share common feelings and experiences. How many times have we heard someone say they were veg for 30 years, they didn't wear animals, avoided products tested on them, but cheese was the thing that stopped them from taking the final step to veganism. But as similar as we are, so too are we unique. Vegan Voices demonstrates no matter from where someone begins and which path they take, they can successfully arrive at destination vegan. My big takeaway from the book was that the cure for so many woes that ail us is veganism. When discussing the woes of the world, be it climate change or rainforest destruction, world hunger, ocean dead zones, human disease and disorder, animal suffering, on and on and on, veganism seems to be the solution. Both our individual and collective vegan voice is powerful, and we can all be inspiring change makers for animals, the planet, and one another. And this was an aptly named book, and I absolutely loved it. Thank you very much for being the person to bring it to us.
Thank you so much for supporting the book and having this wonderful chance to share ideas today. Thanks to Calling All Vegans.
And on the break, we're going to be having some pieces that Joanne sent me, some little piano.
Oh, very nice.
Yes,
excellent.
very nice,
Excellent.
yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you very much for taking your time today and coming onto the show. It was an absolute pleasure to have a chance to speak with each of you and get to know more about the wonderful work that each of you are doing. So thank you again.
Thank you, and thank you for all your wonderful work.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
Very much.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Good to see you again, Mary, and nice to meet you, Joanne.
Okay.
And will this be posted at a certain point? And
Yeah.
can
As soon as we have that information, we'll keep you in the loop. I've got a number of episodes that I'm working on, and so we'll have to do some post-production work as well as figure out what's going to be matched up with it for the full episode, etc. But we'll definitely keep each of you posted on that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
You too.
Bye, Mary.
Bye.